So sorry for having so many videos on this, but there's a lot to say, and Moore is getting into some very interesting territory, and I think it's well worth talking about. There's one more question that Moore wants to deal with in this article, and remind ourselves what it is. It's a question which is more narrow than the general question of can we ever know that there is an external world, a world external to us, external to our minds, and can we say things that are true about it. Moore's general strategy is to say, if you concede that if you concede that I truly know, or simply that I know, any of the 7 assertions with which I began my lecture, then you have also conceded that there is an external world, because none of those assertions could possibly be true, and I could not be said to know them unless there were an external world. And you sort of brought us to the point of this choice between conceding then the truth, or conceding that he does indeed know the things that he claimed at the beginning of the lecture, and that therefore we can have knowledge of an external world, or that any so-called knowledge of an external world is only a guess, an opinion, a hypothesis that can never really be known with the kind of surety and certainty that Moore claims that we know those things. Of course, he has such a large issue, the issue of the reality of the external world, whether the material world is something that is distinct from us and that we can know it. These are questions that Russell indicated in Appearance and Reality were huge questions in the history of philosophy, so it's not realistic that Moore could really establish that fundamental realist thesis, let's say. So he focuses on the question of whether we can establish, whether we can prove that we are not dreaming. And his strategy is to poke holes in the argument. That is, as we said in the last video, one could say that the burden of proof is on the skeptic, who wants to say that it could be the case that we're all dreaming right now, and we could never really know for sure that we're not dreaming. And I think, in a way, what Moore seems to be suggesting is that that's so offensive to common sense. It's possibly true. There are surprising philosophical results that may be true. I mean, they don't have to jibe with our common sense, but it seems so unlikely to common sense that there'd have to be a really good argument that we couldn't know that we're not dreaming, that it's possible that we are all dreaming right now. And I think that Moore tries to score 2 points of criticism against this argument. The first has to do with let's say, the logical consistency of the skeptic's point. And here I would point you to the bottom of the first column on page 270. He asks this: what then are the premises and the reasonings which would lead so many philosophers to think that all the sensory experiences I am having now may be mere dream images, that I do not know for certain that they are not? So far as I can see, one premise which they would certainly use would be this: some at least of the sensory experiences which you are having now are similar in important respects to dream images which actually have occurred in dreams. Unquote. Moore says, this seems a very harmless premise, and I am quite willing to admit that it is true. That is, that some at least of the sensory experiences which I'm having right now are similar in important respects to dream images. And it seems to be a premise of the argument. That is, that the sensory experiences that you and I are having right now are similar to sensory experiences we had in dreams, and therefore, since they're so similar, we wouldn't be able to tell them apart, so we could be dreaming right now. And what Moore says immediately there is that but if you concede that, if you state that is, that some of the sensory experiences we're having right now are similar to the dream images that we had when we were dreaming, can you really then say that everything that we experience could be a dream? Moore says no, not if you're consistent. Because if you do state that principle, that similarity between what we're experiencing right now and dream images, what you seem to be logically committed to is the idea that we have dreamed. He says of the skeptic, he is implying, therefore, that he himself knows that dreams have occurred. Well, if you know that dreams have occurred, well, excuse me, if everything that in your experience is a dream, you couldn't possibly know that dreams have occurred. That is, you couldn't actually know that proposition. That proposition could not be something that you know. You couldn't assert that dreams have occurred, if indeed all of your experience is simply a dream. You wouldn't know that dreams have occurred. I mean, if I say that dreams have occurred, it's similar in structure to saying that, I don't know, presidential elections have occurred, or World Series games have occurred. That is, I'm stating something about the world. And so if everything has always been a dream, then how could you possibly know that dreams have occurred? So that seems to be the first point that Moore thinks the skeptic would have to deal with. But even if he allows the consistency of the point, that is, that because of the similarity between sensory experiences now that we're having and sensory experiences we have when we're dreaming, we can't tell the difference, and therefore we could all be dreaming. Moore has one last point, which is a very difficult point. I'm not sure that he explains it at all sufficiently, and that is this. And this is at the bottom of the first column on page 271. He says this: now I cannot see my way to deny that it is logically possible that all the sensory experiences I'm having now should be mere dream images. That is, it's logically possible. It's not self-contradictory to say that all the experiences I'm having right now could be dream images, or are dream images. It's not self-contradictory. That's what logically possible means. It doesn't contradict itself. And if this is logically possible, and if further the sensory experiences I am having now were the only experiences I am having, I do not see how I could possibly know for certain that I'm not dreaming. It's an interesting thing that he says at the end. If the sensory experiences I am having now were the only experiences I am having, I do not see how I could possibly know for certain that I'm not dreaming. That is, if the sensory experiences I was having right now were the only sensory experiences I had ever had, then there's no way that I would be able to know that I was not dreaming. If Moore says that then the skeptic would win. Then he continues, he says, but the conjunction of my memories of the immediate past with these sensory experiences may be sufficient to enable me to know that I am not dreaming. That is, what Moore immediately brings in is the idea that, well, it's conceivable that if all the experiences I'd ever had were the experiences I'm having right now, there's just no way that I'd be able to know whether I was dreaming or not. But the conjunction of the experiences I'm having right now and my memories of the immediate past, that Moore is suggesting, if you concede that I have memories of at least what seems to me to be an immediate past, along with the sensory experiences that I'm having right now, that's not conceivable. It's not conceivable if you put those two things together, the memories and the immediate experiences I'm having right now. It's not conceivable that I could be dreaming. In fact, he seems to suggest at the end that it's actually logically impossible or self-contradictory. That is to say, right now I'm having sensory experiences and I have a memory of the immediate past. But if you say that, you can't go on to say, but I could still be dreaming. That is, that would be self-contradictory. To say, I'm having sense experiences right now, I have a memory of my immediate past, and I could be dreaming. What Moore is saying is that that's not logically possible, that contradicts itself. Now, he doesn't explain why, but it seems to me that what he's, again, this is kind of a guess, but to say, I am dreaming, is logically incompatible with saying, I am experiencing something right now, and I have memories of the immediate past. That is, to say, I have memories of the immediate past, is to rule out the idea that I'm dreaming.